Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm so glad to see all of you here. So in this session, we are continuing what we've been doing with these last several MatMed on the Hub classes, where we've been looking at remedies that are made from liquid sources. We talked about seawater, aqua marina. We talked about sanicula. There are water from holy springs, water from healing springs, water from all kinds of different places. And today, the water that we're going to focus on is actually the water that every client produces that is 100% individualized to them. Now, this is called autotherapy, and there's a fellow named Yuri Sahovsky who's written a book about it that you may have. It's called Autopathy. And there you go. That's all the information about him. And you can purchase this book. And he says that he is the originator of this method. And although I don't want to cast aspersions upon him, I have to say that he's like 100 years too late to be the originator of this method. This method called autopathy is actually one that was pioneered by a fellow named Charles Duncan. And originally it was called the Duncan method. Now, Charles Duncan was a steel worker. Eventually, he retrained and became a physician. He was the head of genitourinary medicine. He practiced in New York City, and he saw lots of cases that he wasn't really able to help very much. And he had the experience of seeing someone who had an injured dog, and the dog had this wound, and he kept licking the wound. And he was basically microdosing himself with all of the exudate of the wound. And this gave Charles Duncan an idea. He said, you never see a dog that dies of the kinds of septicemia that we see humans die of. So he thought, there is this phrase that every disease contains within it its own cure. And he thought, what if that is true for specific wounds, for specific kinds of difficulties and traumas that the human body gets into? He spent 8 years researching this, using it, writing articles, teaching it, encouraging other people to try it, where you basically take any bodily discharge and potentize it and give it to the person and see what happens. And he found very quick responses from doing this and shared these ideas with lots of other people. He got badly laughed at and ridiculed and persecuted and bothered until other people started doing the same thing. And it became a very widely used form of therapy around 1915. By then, enough people were using it all through the US. Enough physicians were using it all through the US that it became quite a widely accepted therapeutic strategy. And he began to collect notes and from articles that he had written and published and conferences that he had attended. And he wrote a book called Autotherapy by Charles Duncan, and you can download it for free from Google Books, and I would recommend everybody do that. It is well written, and he is a good communicator. And he goes through and gives examples not just of tears, but of many, many different kinds of basically autoimmunizations where you give yourself a dose of whatever you've got that in a way is fundamentally homeopathic. Now, he was not fundamentally a homeopath, but he did pioneer this method, and it was adopted by many, many, many homeopaths. Now, he came to this through the idea of bacteriology, and, Pasteur and Wright, and there had been many, many scientists who had been working in this direction. And he took objection to the idea of making a vaccine from one particular strain of something, which was seldom going to match the particular strain somebody else had and their individual immune system response to it. So he believed that the very best source of immunization, if you will, for each person was their own body's response. And he used this for all kinds of things. So today we're going to talk just a little bit about teardrops and the usefulness of the client's teardrop as a specific remedy for them. And we're going to talk about why we might want to use that, when we should consider it, how to use it as a primary strategy, and how to use it as an adjunct. First of all, I want to show you some pictures. This is a picture of a tear that was produced by wind blowing into someone's eyes, causing the eyes to water. There is a photographer named Maurice Meeker, who is a Dutch fellow who has been taking photographs of tears. And you can see the URL up here, imaginariumoftears.com. And he has been asking people to collect their tears and send them to him. And he allows the tear to dry on a slide. And what we are looking at here in this image is the residue of a tear that has dried on a slide. And you can see the crystallization, the unique crystallization of it. So here's another one, quite different. Now, there are 3 different kinds. Let's talk just a little bit about what tears are about. We're going to save the imaginarium and we're going to come back here. Each tear, and this is from a wonderful website called sciencenotes.org that I recommend you bookmark, because it's got all kinds of wonderful things in here. There's information in here that talks about teardrops. Every teardrop has 3 different layers to it. There's the actual water of the tear, and in it, every time, it has a unique combination of water, of salts, of minerals, and of all kinds of hormones. Now, there is also an oily layer that prevents the tears on your eye from evaporating, and a mucus layer that helps the teardrops attach and stay attached to your eye. So you're producing little teardrops all the time that get blinked into your eyes and help keep your eyes moist. That's not really the kind of thing we're talking about today in terms of creating a remedy. We're actually talking today about the kinds of teardrops that fall out of your eyes. So there are 3 kinds of tears, and one of them is called basal tears. And these are the tears that wash your eyes. They have a salt content in them that is very much like the plasma in blood, and they dissolve away grime on your eye and keep it clean. These are the things that are the standard tears that your eye, the glands in your eyes, are always producing. And then there's reflex tears. These are a reaction to some kind of irritant. It could be like pepper or chopping onions, or being in the smog in a smoggy city, or very bright light. The same kinds of biological reflexes that cause your eyes to tear up are the same things that cause you to cough, that trigger a cough or a yawn or vomiting. They're a biological process that's not related to any experience that you're having as a person. It's a mechanical, if you will, sort of a process. And then the third type of tears are the tears that we have when we think of ourselves as crying. This is when there is an emotional response, either to physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual, or experiential pain in some way. These tears contain prolactin, which is produced in your limbic system. It contains a variety of different neurotransmitters and hormones, and it also contains leuenkephalin, which is a natural painkiller. And this is one of the reasons why sometimes people will say they feel so much better after they have a good cry. For each person, these teardrops are unique. Now let's go back and look again at the Imaginarium of Tears at Maurice Meeker's work. This is a basal tear after looking into the sun, and it has very fine crystals, especially in the center. This is a basal tear that we saw earlier after looking into the wind. This is a reflex tear, a reaction associated with chopping onions. Do you see how different it looks? And this is a reflex tear from eating red peppers and cutting onions. Now, each of these are crystallized. This is a basal tear that was produced by yawning and yawning and yawning. Look at how large the crystals in it are. This is another reflex tear. See how unique each of these is? Now, this is a tear that is associated with sadness. This was an emotion around grief. And this is another tear of sadness, that where someone was crying from a movie that they were watching. So each of these mineral patterns and content of the eye are completely unique, and they are completely individualized to the person in the moment. This is a tear of grief because someone had lost a very dear friend. Okay? So any person who cries is going to have tears that are uniquely and perfectly matched for them at that time. So let's talk about why you would want to do that. Oh, one last comment. If you're interested in learning more, you can go to Imaginarium of Tears to learn more about Maurice Meeker's project, or he also has a TED Talk, How Do Tears Turn Into Art? And you can go listen to his TED Talk to find out more about this. Okay? So what we've talked about so far are that tears are unique, that there are 3 different kinds, and one of them just washes the eyes, one of them is a reaction, and one of them arises from our experience. So if we were to capture tears that were coming up because someone had had a reaction, let's say that we have a client with multiple chemical sensitivities, and when they are exposed to, say, fragrances, maybe their eyes start tearing abundantly. This would be a fantastic time to collect a few of those tears, put it into a little bottle of water. And are you guys familiar with autotherapy bottles? I'm going to show you this. You can buy this on Amazon. It's called an autotherapy bottle. And these were pioneered by the homeopath Finke, Fince, as a way of potentizing remedies through the swirling and agitation of the fluid rather than through the succussion. And so if you have 1 liter of water, let's say that you add a few of the client's teardrops into 1 liter of water, and then you have this bottle. And, you know, you don't want to be making these things for your clients because you're exposed to everything that you make. You want your clients to learn how to do this for themselves. So they have a couple of their teardrops that they collect, and you try to do a clean catch. You don't really want makeup in it. You don't want, you know, skin cells. You really just want the teardrops. And you can do that by holding a spoon very carefully by your eye. And then you put that into a liter of fluid. You pour it through this, and it will swirl in a way that potentizes the fluid. And by the time you put 1 liter through it, you have potentized it to a 100 C. And as you are finishing up, and you can see the last of it, you turn the vial a little bit sideways so that the amount that is collected in here becomes your dose. And you pour that into an eyedropper bottle. And then you have the client take like 5 drops of that once a day for 10 days. And then you reevaluate what is their reactivity to chemicals in their environment. So that would be an example of a way that you would be using it as a primary therapy. We're not adding this on to another remedy. We're saying this is a thing all by itself. Okay? So now let's talk about how we might use this as an adjunct. Let's say that someone has an adverse life experience. Maybe they have a big grief. Somebody that they really loved died. Their dog died. They had a disappointment. They're going through postpartum depression. And for whatever reason, they are just sad, 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 and grim. And as they are crying these tears of grief, you have them collect the tears and do this same thing where they put it through the autotherapy bottle. You know, trying to get clients to do the whole succussion method can be very difficult. They have to have specialized equipment. And with this, they need 1 eyedropper bottle and 1 autotherapy bottle. And these autotherapy bottles, this method that we're talking about potentizing teardrops, this is well known within the autism community, where people are using this for their kids who have all kinds of difficulties. Okay? So if you collect these teardrops during a time of someone's profound grief, for women who get extremely teary as part of their PMS, that's a great time to collect these teardrops. Or when someone has had a really adverse experience that they don't feel able to navigate, some sort of experience of trauma, everything that they have happening within them gets uniquely stamped into these tears with a unique profile of hormones and minerals that will be different every time they cry. So you potentize this, pour it in, and again, if you do it with 1 liter of water, you're going to get a 100 C. If you dilute it in 2 liters of water, by the time that that's poured through, you're going to get, I think, a 200 C, maybe. I think that's right. So what you want is to potentize this enough to give the person, to give the vital force a message that says, here's what you've got. Now, this is completely independent of any other remedy. It does not involve detailed case taking. Now, the process of autotherapy is much bigger than just teardrops. You can also do autotherapy with saliva. I've done it with menstrual flow for women who have endometriosis or menstrual pain. Women who have mastitis can do it with breast milk. You can do it with pus from an infected wound or weeping from cellulitis. You can do it from all these different things. But today we're really focused on the teardrops. And the first example that I gave was how you would use it as primary care for someone who had multiple chemical sensitivities. You could do the very same thing for someone who has severe hay fever, where they get terrible, terrible hay fever and their eyes are running, and you can gather that tear and do the same thing. Put a few tears, and it doesn't need to be very many, into a liter of water, and then pour it through the autotherapy bottle, save some of it, pour it into an eyedropper bottle, and then they take 15 drops of that. Now, if it's somebody who's very sensitive, I'd go down to 3 to 5 drops. If I want them to have a good strong dose, I'd like them to have 15 drops once a day for 10 days and then reevaluate. So you can do this for also if people have pink eye, if people have problems with I've seen a chalazion, that those little patches on the eye completely go away from doing tear therapy. So if there are physical findings in the eye, it's very useful for people who have a sty. And Duncan talks about this. Why would this be? Because they have some kind of infective agent, maybe strep, maybe staph, maybe any other bacteria or virus, and they have the body's individualized response, the specific patterned cells from the thymus, the killer cells and the white blood cells that are more generic. All of those are going to be in that mix. And so it is completely and totally individualized to the person at that time. Now, this dose that they take for 10 days, that may be enough to carry them for 3 months or a year. I've had clients where it completely resolved and it didn't need any other remedy. And other clients where they did it and then like a month later, they collected new tears and did it again. And a month later, they collected new tears and did it again. And each time they were moving forward with an improvement in their pathology. Okay, so we've talked about what's in tears, about Charles Duncan and his method, about how to learn more about it by downloading his Autotherapy book for free from Google Books. Somebody's reprinted it, and you can also buy it from Amazon for $36 if you don't like the electronic version. You can also get Yuri Sahovsky's book. He does a good job of explaining it. But I do take exception to the fact that he says that he is the founder of this method when he's like 100 years too late. But he's dedicated to teaching it, and he's doing a lot to promote it. He teaches it to other practitioners. And so, I appreciate him for putting it out there and making sure that people know about it. Okay, we've talked about using this acutely. like for a sty or for pink eye or something like that. We've talked about using it chronically for grief and trauma, or for something like multiple chemical sensitivities or ongoing hay fever. This is a much ignored, incredibly effective strategy. And as I have with many of these other things, I really encourage you to try this for yourself. Try it with a client. Try it, you order one of these autopathy bottles and try it for yourself. Find something for you that needs improvement. As an example, let's say that you're a little leaky on the urination thing. You just are always dribbling or something. Take a few drops of urine and put it in a liter of water and pour it through there and take it as a tonic. This is an individualized self therapy that is going to be completely unique to you. Try it for yourself, and then try it for your clients. Okay? Any questions? All right. I will post this on the hub along with specific resources, the link to download on Google Books and link to Maurice Meeker's documentation and where you can buy the Autotherapy bottle. And if you try this and you find some good things happening with it, post it in the forum. Let us know. Let us know what's happening with your experiments. Okay? Thanks for joining. Thanks for being part of the hub, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.